Hey everyone, my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end, like, subscribe, bell notification, you know the deal. I want to tell you about the books I read this week, and actually, startlingly similar setup to last week. So I binged a series, then I had read the first two books previously, not the second two, and then I tried a different book like after that, not in the series, and ended up DNFing that. So there's that we're going to talk about, and yeah, shout out to the weather. I mean, it's like minus 20 something plus windshield here, but it's sunny. So shout out to the sun. Hopefully this will be slightly better quality because sunlight. So yeah, let's talk about the books. The rat got groomed. Now we look like a mole rat again. We transitioned from Ewok to mole rat. That's his anamorph phase stages thing. That's not Animorphs. What am I thinking? I'm thinking of Pokemon where like Charizard or whatever becomes Charmander or Charmander becomes Charizard. Yeah, I think that's it. His evolution. That's the word I was looking for. He's normally just kind of a dick to the groomers. Like he'll just stare at them and like kind of glare at them while they groom him. But they're used to it. But I went and picked him up. They're like, it was so weird. He was kissing us today. He doesn't normally show affection towards us. Anyways, so again, same format as last week, starting with my DNF that I technically read at the end of the week. But we're doing first is The Grey Dark by Richard Caudry. I've never read anything by him before, and this is definitely out of my genre wheelhouse. Also take that into consideration. So I got to page 238, I think it was, and then I finally just DNF'd it and gave up. I was originally really curious about this because I really, really like the cover. The under dust jacket is pretty nice too. You can't really tell, but it's silver and then the spine is black with red text. So the same color scheme as the front. So that was really nice. This had like potential to be really cool. The premise of like what happens to a place after the war. Especially if it's on a clean ending war, what happens. Honest to God, I couldn't tell you what the plot of this was. One of the reasons I DNF'd it, I just didn't understand what our end goal was. And I was getting to the point of like, I need to know that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, especially for a standalone. I was like, I don't understand the premise. None of the characters are likable. The world isn't really well developed, nor is it explained. There's parts of it that like insinuate that there's some old infrastructure there, but it never explains where that stops. There's excessively aggressive police officers like targeting this one specific dude, and everything's just like the main character is this one guy, but like not a chosen one thing, I don't think anyways, but there's no explanation given, and at no point is the guy like, what is happening? Like, why are all of these, like, he was just a very infuriating character. There's also a trigger warning for heavy drug use. Also, in this world, there's this, like, disease that, like, it sounds a little bit like the Black Plague, but with some, like, magical influences. Again, there's definitely some fantasy, magic-ish elements in there. Couldn't tell you what parts of it, because it's never explained. None of this is fleshed out, or I didn't have, the characters weren't working for me, the world building wasn't working with me, the plot wasn't working with me, the writing wasn't necessarily working with me. It was just like a perfect storm of things that I was just like, huh? About? I'm hoping at some point the drug use comes in to explain everything. I just couldn't care enough to finish another like 150-ish pages. I just didn't like it. Yeah, so there's like this Black Plague-y thing, and like they call it the drop because people just drop and die. And I was like, honestly, that's kind of a lame name as well too. I was like, that's just that sounds like a roller coaster. The drop. I mean, they explain in the book too that the person just like drops and starts spewing like black stuff. So I'm like, why not call it like Black Lung or Black Mouth or something, you know, that like, also the Grand Dark is like the movie theater in there, and I kept waiting for something to happen, but it, like, again, it doesn't seem in any way to be connecting things to like the movie theater or the performance theater with this, and like it's just, there's a lot of things that it wasn't like a confusing like, ooh, what's going on. It was a confusing, I don't think the author thought this through. kind of book. So, unfortunately, a DNF. So this week I read the Charlotte Holmes Quartet, I think it was. So I had originally read A Study in Charlotte, which is book 1, as well as The Last of August, book 2, but I hadn't read book 3 and 4. So I did a reread of these two first. I think I remembered the vast majority of A Study in Charlotte. I didn't remember any of The Last of August, so I'm really happy I did a reread of that. So our main character set in a bit more modern time. Honestly, this whole series is like Romeo and Juliet meets Sherlock Holmes retelling in modern times. It is much darker, absolute trigger warning for sexual assault and drug use. Again, wow, I read a lot of weird books this week. I just don't need that. It's a dark week. But our main character, Charlotte Holmes, as you can imagine, is, I think, the great-granddaughter of Sherlock Holmes, and her family has some problems. But back in England, the Moriartys and the Holmes are still kind of feuding as families, and things have escalated extremely in the last few years during Charlotte Holmes' era, where she was in love with one of Moriarty's sons, one of the Moriarty sons, and then like sets him up when to get like take the fall for like doing stuff when he doesn't reciprocate those emotions. Charlotte's like a very like immoral character. She's like enjoyable, I think. I don't know. I don't think she's necessarily likable, but she's an interesting character to definitely give her that. And then she is at a boarding school in the U.S. And of course, James Watson, who is descendant of Dr. Watson, he gets a rugby scholarship to join this school, so he joins that. His mother still lives in England, so throughout this whole series they kind of jump back and forth between the US and the UK. But yeah, so that is the main thing in the first book, that throughout the whole series essentially they're all being set up and it's always like some way involved with the Moriartys. So I thought it was interesting that they never brought in any other elements. It was always focusing on the Moriartys. I don't think I really ever saw like oh my god, what's her name? What's her name? Adler, Irene Adler. I don't think I ever saw an Irene Adler character, which was kind of disappointing. Yeah. That was one thing I was like expecting to show up in the third and fourth book, but that didn't happen. That was sad. But Irene is probably my favorite character in all the TV shows because we mess with it so much, because she really doesn't have much of a presence in the books. Her and like Moriarty are only in like one book or something like that. But anyways, I really, really enjoyed the first. I think in general, the first book was a 5 stars and the rest of the series was 4 stars for me, or 4.5 stars. So sometimes, yeah. But I really enjoyed, I think I enjoyed book 2 because it was a little bit different from book 1. Like, it wasn't the same speed. I feel like it was a little bit more angsty than anything else. Sometimes it's a negative, sometimes it's a positive. I just like that it was a little bit different pacing and it changed things, because I think they're teens and there is such a change in James's life from book 1 to book 2 that I feel like it kind of does make sense that he was like that. So that's just something to be aware of if you hate those kind of angsty books. Book 2 is kind of angsty. So like I said, 3 and 4 for me were complete brand new reads. The Case for Jamie, I think, is actually, I know this is gonna sound weird, but like I think it's actually my favorite of the series. I think it's actually my favorite of the series. I know that sounds weird because I think book 1 is still a 5 stars for me. I think it's a really, really good, strong debut. But I think book 3 in the series, though it probably is more of a 4 star, was my favorite of the series. I know. I don't know how to explain that. But I really like that James tries to go back after everything that happens in the Last of August to like try and get his life back together, and then it shows him getting drawn back into the Holmes world again, which happens so much in all of our adaptations of the Holmes, and then just everything where Sherlock always ends up pulling Watson into things that Watson has no idea what's happening. So I really liked that. There was a lot of mirroring, but I think it was also adapted well enough that it's still like, I didn't feel like it was copying necessarily things, and I didn't think it was like not doing anything original. I think she still messed with the characters an awful lot. I feel like this would have been the perfect book for Irene Adler to pop up. Like, I'm sorry, but with the whole like the art theft and everything that was happening in the other book, like I really, really wish that we would have had Irene Adler in The Case for Jamie. I just really do. And last book, the Question of Holmes. This is honestly, I think, the weakest book of the series, and not that it's necessarily bad. I just don't think it was necessary. It didn't really contribute anything to any of the characters or the conflicts or the plots. I think the world was still as it was. I don't know that it was necessary, in all honesty. I also got to the end and I'm still not sure where I stand on Charlotte and James as a couple, because she is like a really bad, genuinely, like as a person, like she's something that I would have a very difficult time like associating with, let alone dating. So I understand why they're kind of being pushed together, but I also like that the author doesn't really shy away from that. Like they have like a very like it's not like a happily ever after romance. So the author really does acknowledge that she has PTSD, she has drug use, and addiction problems, and that she has this like kind of inability to stay in one place at the same time for long periods of time. Her family, home life was never good. It's always been messed up. So she does need legitimate help, but really isn't wanting to ever take it. And James was brought up in a very different environment, and that's morphed them into extremely different people. So it's interesting how it does end. It's not a clean ending, which I can appreciate, but as a whole, I don't think this book was necessary. I feel like we could have taken the epilogue of this, really, put it in the case for Jamie, and just ignored the vast majority of this, like, mystery. It just didn't do anything for me, unfortunately. Oh my god, I totally forgot. So I actually did read one more book this week. Forgot. My library physical copy hasn't come in. It still has not even gone through cataloging. It's still in processing for months now, it seems like. So I'm not waiting. And my audiobook that I have of it was just sitting there and was about to expire. So I decided to read 1,000 Fires by Shannon Price on audiobook. I feel like I just needed a really good read for me right now that isn't like super dark. This wasn't really what I wanted though, but this was a book I had been curious about. I will stand by the fact what I said originally. This book, when it was bought and first put on Goodreads and when I first heard about it, was called The Red Bridge Wars. They changed it to 1,000 Fires. I have absolutely no clue why it is called 1,000 Fires, having read the book now. It should have been called The Red Bridge Wars. I don't know why they changed it. A, it's just a generally a better title. Two, it makes sense because it's constantly referred to as The Red Bridge Wars. I don't think I ever heard the term 1,000 Fires ever in this entire book. I don't know where it came from. I don't know its purpose. It was a bad title, okay? Also, we need to discuss this cover. It looks cheap, okay? Having also read the book, I understand the stag thing because there's different gangs in there, and one of the gangs is a stag, and you get a tattoo when you join the stags. So, why wasn't this a tattoo cover? All of the gangs, there's 3 gangs, they have logos, and it's explained in them, based on their names, what they are. Why wouldn't you look at something like, I think the book's called Ink and Blood. It's supposed to come out in January or February 2020. It has a tattoo cover. It should. This is something that should have also had a cover with a tattoo incorporated in it. There's just a whole bunch of mix-match issues with this. I've also seen the undercover dust jacket because I saw it when it got delivered to our work when they were before cataloging. They didn't do anything with it. You could have put a stag on the under dust jacket. Why did you butcher this, like the design and the aesthetics outside so badly? Like, it was just very badly done. There's so many, and I feel bad. This is not a bad debut by any means. It wasn't what I was looking for, really, and I think I really did struggle that there's too much unnecessary romance in it. We all know how I feel about romance in it. The romance was absolutely unnecessary. It's not a clean ending, so I can give her that. She didn't do an easy, like, wrap up of everyone lives happily ever after, because it wouldn't make sense in this context. However, all of the characters that have romances could have just been friends. There was absolutely no need for there to be a romance other than, well, it's YA, it has to have a romance. It was unnecessary. It took away from the main character. I also don't understand, I think my issue with this book was, like, she joins a gang to try and find out who killed her brother and what happened there. And that's her whole thing, and you're supposed to, like, it explains how long you're supposed to stay in the gangs and all that stuff in there. They don't seem to ever actually do much. For a gang, like, she's there for, like, quite a while, too. For a gang, they just stay home and shop an awful lot. Maybe I just have a different view of what gangs are, but, like, that seemed a little bit messed up and warped. I like that it is Filipino-American-owned voices. I love that we're getting that. The writing itself isn't necessarily bad. I just think it fell into too many tropes without justification, especially the romance. So those are the books that I read this week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you read this week. I'd love to know. And if you've read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts. Make sure to check the description box. I will link all of those books down there. And I will also link all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you